So we welcome in Sharks General Manager Doug Wilson. Of course, thank you for your time. I'd like to start off with the announcements that happened from the NHL this week, just to get your thoughts on the solutions presented for completing the 2019-2020 season and the plans for the draft during this, what is an unprecedented situation.
Well, it's obviously the NHL and the Players Association worked very hard, I think, on finding a format that would make sense should the opportunity arise going forward to resume back to play. The one thing I'm very proud of everybody involved is that really the health of everybody is the most paramount thing going, whether it be our players, the staff, most importantly our fans and the community. And I think everybody has really taken that into consideration. And I think when and if play does resume under this format, the health officials will be the ones that will make that final decision. But I do know a lot of work went into it, and from our team, I know Logan Couture and I think Martin Jones were very involved in that process. As far as the draft, obviously there's been a lot of discussion about the draft taking place in June, and all our scouts and staff have been working extremely hard to be prepared for that. I think we've done up to about between 150 and 160 interviews, teleconferencing on Zoom to be ready for that. We've now been notified that it's going to be later on in the summer. So the work is done there. Draft is going to be very important to us, and making sure that our preparation was in place was very important.
Well, continuing on with the draft, when making the drafting decisions, how much of the choice in the player is based on your input versus the input of the scouting staff?
Well, we do it collectively, but the scouts are the ones that have followed these players all year long. Timmy Burke, Doug Jr., Joe Will. I mean, we have a great staff. We've been very fortunate to have them intact for a long time, and they've performed very well over the years since we started this in 2003. This year we've got 7 picks, 3 picks in the top 60 in a very deep draft. So we're going to be able to get some very good players, especially early on. So in a year that you don't have the benefit of having a draft combine where you can physically test players in Buffalo, the additional work and interviews I think was really important, and I think the staff has done a great job in that area.
Well, and clearly you're going to have different assets than you had a few years ago, but I'm curious to know what you took away from the Vegas expansion draft and how that might influence your approach with the Seattle expansion draft forthcoming.
Well, I think we lost a player. We knew we were going to lose one, and when expansion comes, we lost David Schlemko. We'd kind of planned for that, and we felt that we had some players coming underneath that made sense for us. So that was our approach. Many other teams had different approaches. Vegas did a very good job of taking advantage of the opportunities. It'll be interesting to see now when Seattle comes into it, where teams have had even more time to prepare for how they want to build their team or protect their assets and players in preparation for that. But the people in Seattle, Ronnie Francis, Ricky Olchuk, will do a very good job.
Excellent. If we can go into kind of this past season, obviously a disappointing one, but a few years past, the team culture was called into question. I'm sure you remember the quote about co-workers and not teammates. And during this past season, some in hockey media had speculated about rifts in the room, and Martin Jones recently saying when it started to spiral, we went our own ways instead of coming together. Can you share your thoughts on how you can bring a team together and perhaps why this past season never quite came together?
Well, I think it was a learning experience, and I think with this group in particular, I think they all cared. And I think there was a lot of frustration. You get highly talented players that have high expectations. And we got off to a very poor start. We didn't have a very good training camp, and certainly the first month, October, we did not play very well. And I think that's where the frustrations came. And sometimes players try and do too much. They all care, and trust me, we believe in our guys. And I think you learn through it and say, okay, that didn't work. That's not how we want to handle things. But I've had the benefit of interviews with all our players. I've talked to all of them in the last little while, and I think every one of them to a man has said, we know how we can handle this better. They do care about each other, and I think they believe that we have the bones of a very good hockey team if, one, we can come in and get off to a good start, have a good training camp, because it's been 2 years in a row that we didn't have good starts to the season. A year ago, we worked our way through it, and we were very fortunate. This year, we kind of, November, we were one of the best teams in the league record-wise. December, we set back. And then, unfortunately, we had 3 major injuries to Carlson, couture and hurdle. And with the league the way it is with the parity around there, very difficult to continue to compete with three of your best players out.
As I'm sure you're far more aware than anyone else, every fan is an armchair general manager. What is your response to those that look at the cap situation right now and maybe believe that too much money has been perhaps allocated on the blue line to the detriment of the forward group, particularly on the right side, and looking forward to ways to address that?
Well, I think what happened, I think you're probably alluding to the cap potentially being flatter than people expected. So
yes.
I think that impacts probably about 25 teams in this league. You need to have talented players. And if you take a look around the league, you've got to have a certain level of talent and skill to be able to compete and win. The two players on the back end are two of the best players in the game. They both won Norris trophies, and in Eric's case, multiple Norris trophies. So we're very pleased to have them. Do you have to make decisions through your lineup, as every team does going forward, and how you dedicate your dollars? That's the way it is. For us to be successful, our best players have to be our best players. Looking forward to them coming back healthy and in great levels of fitness to start next season. But I think every one of our players will look at it and believe that we do have the bones of a good hockey team. It'd be nice to add a couple more things and have some more growth internally. But I have no problem with people caring enough to ask questions or voice their opinions. I'd rather have that than apathy.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the growth forward. Last September, fans heard a lot of excitement about some players as camp was beginning. There were some notable contributions from a couple of the new players, but I would think it's fair to say that some may not have met expectations. Are there some guys that may have surprised you over the course of this season that maybe their expectations weren't set so high and they've more than exceeded them in your eyes?
Well, I think what happened is, when we came into training camp, there were roles and opportunities for some young players to come in and compete for. But when we had a couple of injuries and we had suspension to Evander Kane, what happened is some of the younger players were pushed up into roles that they probably weren't expected to be in, and we didn't really expect them to have to be in. It's one of the reasons why we signed Patty Marleau to bring him in and help in that area. But I think some of the players have really gone through experiential learning this past year. If you look at a player like Mario Ferraro, he came in and he's physically very strong. He trained really hard in college. He came in and I think he played extremely well. Some of our other players, as they got more chances later in the year, whether it be Dylan Gambrell or Alexander True or Noah Gregor, they showed that they are very close to being able to play, and not only play, but make a difference. We've got some other young players that we've signed. John Leonard, who is the leading goal scorer in all of college hockey, is coming from the same program as Mario was in, and he's got a man's body already. He's built. Brinson Pasternak, really dominant college defenseman. A very, very strong guy that, I think he is advanced and ready to go. And we signed a goalie, Alexei Melnichuk, also. So we've started adding players already. But a year like last year, and some of the guys that played in the Barracuda, which was the youngest league team in the AHL, they gathered a lot of experience too. So what you really want to see is a lot of competition coming into camp. We don't give people jobs, we give them opportunities. And we think this group of players and some of the ones that we've added are going to come in and help make us a better team too.
Well, and last September, speaking of Marleau, when there was a lot of speculation about Marleau returning after being bought out by Carolina, you were quoted as mentioning that it was time to kind of move on and grant the youth that opportunity that they had earned. Obviously, circumstances changed and Marleau returned. However, when Marleau was moved to Pittsburgh, the post comments from that action sounded as if, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it almost sounded as if it was fait accompli that he would return to the Sharks next season. I don't know if you can speak to the plans on that right now, but is that potentially anything that a fan could look forward to as him setting that record in a Sharks jersey?
First of all, everybody knows how we feel about Patty Marleau, and as of right now, he's a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, so I can't talk about his future, but I think everybody should be able to understand how I feel about him. And let me clarify, too, because there should be no confusion about last summer. We promised a lot of the young guys the opportunities come into training camp. And when you give your word to people, meaning the young players, some of the guys that signed from Europe, some of the other players that we brought in, the expectation was that they would come in, they'd be given the opportunity. If they weren't quite ready for it, then we would add some players. And Patty Marleau was at the top of that list, and I'd kept that communication with both Patrick and his agent, and that's how it played out. It wasn't that we were moving forward. It was that we gave our word to some of the people that had come in and committed to our organization that they would be given that chance. And Patty was working hard, and I knew he wanted to come back. And as soon as the opportunity arose, we came to an agreement very quickly. I thought he came in and played very well for us and gave us not only everything on the ice but off the ice, and was a very good contributor to us, as he's always been.
With regards to the coaching staff, obviously no decision has been made on Bob Boughner, but whether he remains or not, is it reasonable for fans to expect to see Sommer, Ricci, and Nabby back in their spot with the CUDA next season, or is that just simply up to whoever ends up being the bench boss next season?
Well, first of all, they all did an outstanding job. Coming in halfway through a year is very difficult, and the fact that Roy and Nabby and Ricci were familiar with our young players in our organization. They came in and were very, very supportive and really helped with Bob Boughner. Bob, I think, did a really good job of resetting how we wanted to play. The second half of the year, I think we were playing the game more consistently the right way. I think the high danger scoring chances went way down, which gave our goaltenders a better chance on many of the defensive zone opportunities. I thought we played more to our identity and structure. So I think Bob came in and made some tweaks, made some adjustments. And I think, especially prior to Eric and Logan and Tomash getting hurt, I thought our team was playing some pretty good hockey, some of their best hockey all year. As far as going forward, the process is to always be extremely thorough. There's no doubt that Bob has the inroads into the coaching position, but I have to explore every opportunity to make us be the best team possible. And it's also not just about the head coach, it's about the rest of the staff and the ingredients. And I think that's to be decided going forward. There's no doubt that Roy, Ricci, and Nabby are going to be parts of this organization. In what role, that'll be decided mostly by the new head coach coming in.
All right, and finally, I'd like to know, I don't expect you to name names or teams, but there are a considerable amount of former Sharks that will be involved in the upcoming playoffs. Marleau, Pavelski, Gaudreau, Nyquist, Dillon, Donskoy, Braun. Is there one in particular you're secretly rooting for? You don't have to tell me.
Well, I'll say this. I have a couple of trade deals that, should that team win a Stanley Cup, the picks that we acquired for them improve. So from a purely selfish position, there's a couple of teams in particular that I would be cheering for. You're going to have to look it up and see the trade deals that benefit us. And but no, we always appreciate any time a player has ever played for us. We want to treat them with the class and respect that they deserve. And I think you always remember what they brought to the table, and we appreciate that. So we keep in contact with those players. We wish them all the best. And again, what they were able to bring to us as an organization and to our fans, we appreciate, and we go forward.
I thank you again so much for taking this time to talk to us once again, and we so look forward to seeing the Sharks begin their 30th anniversary season. So thank you again.
Thank you. Make sure everybody's staying healthy and safe and taking care of each other.